called Epiphany anyways, right? Okay.
This is It's Just a Model, the podcast on the interstitial of ethics, business, tech, design and being human. This is episode 2, Epiphany. I'm Peet Sneekes, creative strategist and hypothetical system thinker. And I'm joined by Ron Kersic, the humanistic architect of the future and the dorsal stream of tech. Hello, Ron.
Hello.
In this podcast, we'll be furiously interrogating topics that interest us with the intent to peel away the veneer and focus on the truth between the lines. If you experience value from this podcast, like information, entertainment, then you should return that value through your time, talent, or treasure. Check out our website and the show notes for more details. So we've got this book here. Let me show you the book. Let's see. It's over here. Here we go. And this is the book Intersection, and it's written by Milan. I dare not say pronounce his last name, and the phone number doesn't work, by the way. This is a lender for my colleagues, and it's called Intersection, and it's kind of like describing everything. I'm not sure if I can find like the infographic in there, but it describes all kinds of cross sections of an organization and what kind of things you can do when you want to work on a specific part of your organization. And I kind of feel like this book really was an eye opener for me because it describes what holistic meant in an organization. So for reference, I mostly worked on the experience of things. So what people would see of a product or a service, like the digital parts, and I kind of have had an inkling on where it came from, but I didn't know and how it came to being an identity and let's say an architecture of people and technology. But I didn't see the real connection. And I think it was kind of like because I didn't see the connection in the companies that I worked in, and people were actually trying to disconnect them, So if you had an identity or brand, there was kind of like a signage rather than a truth of how you would act within a company. And similarly for the organization, it was kind of like a blueprint of the past rather than a real tool to shape as you need, right?
Yeah. It's so, I think that's quite obvious. We really don't script this podcast, right? And we don't
at
have
all
very big plans up front what to talk about. But I just entered this little studio and here is this book.
Yeah.
And what you don't know is this book is really dear to me. Because this is the book for my, let's call it, transitioning away from pure tech. So this was 2013. I was involved in an agile transformation project, so quite big on Scrum.
Yeah.
And agile both in the small caps A and in the capital A. You have different...
like the religion and just the act.
Yes, indeed. And so for quite some time, I had this hunch that I was missing on something big.
Yeah.
And this is going to sound funny now for the people that are into design. But then I stumbled on the double diamond. And a double diamond is discover, define, develop, and deliver. Yeah, there it is. I really love the double diamond. And there I saw I had been spending quite some time in the second double diamond.
Yeah.
The develop and deliver double diamond.
Right.
Part of the double diamond. So there's actually a whole diamond up in front of the world I had been occupying. So,
yeah.
And that's where I start delving in what turned out to be design thinking.
Yeah.
And service design, which back then were about to being hyped. So I was slightly ahead of that curve.
I think what's the company that really was a trailblazer in that field or codified like design thinking?
IDEO?
I think IDEO, yeah.
IDEO, whatever you want to pronounce it. Yeah, it's the. But so there I was identifying as an enterprise architect, and I was doing design thinking and all these design-related activities.
Yeah.
And then somebody said, there is a book about that, and that's this. And and now it sounds really sad, I guess. But actually, having a book written about the journey I was embarking on,
it really
felt
nice.
like a form of, well, let's say, a sort of a validation, right? So this isn't entirely stupid.
No, it's an affirmation, I think. So, I mean, of course, it's validating. It's like, I'm not mad. This is something I didn't come up with, or perhaps I did, but it comes from truth. It comes from something that other people also recognize.
Yeah,
and I like that as well. And to me, it was I call it affirmation as being also you're on the right track, and this is a comforting. So you thinking of part of this, of methods like design thinking or ways to, I don't know, connect creativity with actually building a business or building something concrete. That is something, to me at least, was very comforting and also nice.
Designing the business, designing the enterprise, right?
Yeah.
That the enterprise is the object of a design activity.
Exactly.
I think that's I still to this day think that's very inviting.
And
we can design this.
Do people say to you, Ron, you are way more creative than I am, and since you, let's say, discovered or developed the skills to do design thinking, for example?
No, never.
Huh.
I mean, I have quite a few things thrown at me, but never, oh, you're way too creative.
No, not too creative, but just creative.
No,
as being an aspirational skill set or something other people can't do.
I don't think it's the creativity bit. What comes back quite a lot is the storytelling bit or the narrating bit.
Yeah.
Which of course is maybe an expression of creativity, but it's so that's a bit more than the creativity bit.
Yeah.
But there's a question behind the question, I feel.
Well, I mean, it's something. So I've been discovering more and more that people compartmentalize.
Yeah.
Let's call it that.
Yeah.
Things, functions that we do in our jobs.
Yeah.
And the last time we talked about creation and production seems to be two different modes.
Yeah.
Seem to need two different kind of people, I guess.
Yeah.
And I feel like people really build walls between it, as in no. For example, if you work at HR, then you're not allowed or you're not privy to the tools and mindsets of design, which is very silly to me because I come from technology, and only at the point that I really I didn't see any problem to use creativity to express the things that I did in technology was very interesting to me and was very like, oh, finally I'm whole, you know?
Yeah.
And I feel I feel a lot of things apparently, but I think most companies are kind of like formalizing themselves into oblivion, making themselves a little bit disabled rather than making themselves whole.
Yeah.
And this does not go just for design or the act of being creative, but also for other things, you know, for checking in with people and being very social as a HR function, we would say right now.
Yeah.
Or trying to build something as an engineer or as a person that wants to try out new materials.
Yeah.
And being curious about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I typically pigeonhole or pitch or position design as designing our way out of this. Right? Because I think there's a strong tendency to keep continuing on a trajectory you started, or society started.
Yeah.
Right? Or I mean, the organization you just described is probably 300 years old. Well, let's say 200 years old, right? I mean, Frederick Winslow Taylor, the whole scientific management idea. I mean, that it is called scientific. Whether or not that is true, that's debatable. But that's the pickle we are in. And the reason why I made this point that I really love the whole aspect of designing the enterprise. I mean, it's that the enterprise we know and love is really the project of the United States Ministry of Defense, then called the Minister of War from the Second World War.
Right.
Because, well, they better than the Japanese and the Germans saw that the way to win the war is by industrializing at a frightful rate.
Yeah.
And to optimize for that industrial capacity, they actually built a curriculum, and consultants would actually go to the companies contracted by the U.S. Ministry of War or Defense to actually innovate better. And to manage their workers better and to educate them better. And this management technology, or management as technology, is probably the greatest export product of the United States right after the Second World War.
Yeah.
And we have our enterprises built on that model, that we have a chief executive officer, chief operation officer. It's that model. So this form of organizing has been designed at some point, quite explicitly actually.
Yeah, and it's not being questioned, I think.
And
or let's say at least validated. Like, is this the person that we really need? Do we need to internalize this?
I think at some point this was certainly a superior way of organizing. Certainly during the Second World War, in the 50s, the 60s, maybe even the 70s. It's debatable whether it's still the uniform, dominant or successful form to go forward. Not quite sure.
I think it just should be like questioned. Or let's say just, hey, we're starting a company, just like you would fill in your business model. You should also fill in your execution model, right? I mean, it's part of the business model.
Yeah, I mean,
but you should be able to say, so what shape should we have in order to reach not our goals, but to be able to grow further or to take the next leap.
I mean, there is this saying, right? We shape the tool and the tool shapes us.
And
you can also say, right, we shape the organization and the organization shapes us.
Yeah.
I used to go to a lot of startup events, right, where startup actually pitch themselves. And it's always hilarious, right? You have the startup consisting of three guys. One calls him the CEO, one is called the COO, and the other is the CTO.
Yeah,
it's just three guys on an attic.
Yeah, just dudes.
Just dudes, typically. And they already put themselves in the mold of the enterprise.
Right, yeah.
Instead of you could actually sit and think, what is actually the way of organizing that befits what we're trying to achieve?
Yeah.
Or that helps us understand what it is that we want to achieve. No, you start with the age-old template. That's the post-Second World War template.
Yeah, that default is imprinted on a lot of people as being comfortable.
Yeah.
And perhaps it's that also in a culture of an organization that you have something you can at least rely on or something.
Yeah.
Of course, there is a chief financial officer,
Yeah.
Or somebody is taking care of the customers or whatever kind of thing.
Yeah. Institutions are very persistent. And they're actually hard to recognize as being persistent. That's that other saying, right? How's the water? You know that little story. So two fish are swimming in the water. An older fish comes by and says, "Hey guys, how's the water?" And the two young fish say, "What is water?"
Because
they are
that's
surrounded by
their ether. That's
the ether, and
exactly just like the ether, it doesn't exist unless you have the chemical version of ether.
But just seeing the thing you're surrounded with day in and day out, that's the tricky thing, and that's why institutions, I think, are so persistent.
I
think
so too. Yeah.
To redesign or question, right? And I think designing is questioning things. How might we? How might we not?
Yeah.
What should we? What should we not?
It's also it's in investigating.
Yeah.
It's not per se doubting or saying is this the real choice, but it's let's find out what at this moment in time, and specifically that, because I feel like a lot of companies have settled in that model you just described.
Yeah.
As being this is the default now.
Yeah, it is the default.
Exactly, but it might have been a great default for the start, but is really a bad default. Let's say, for example, if you find yourself in a rut, if your business going slowly but surely worse and worse, and you might find you need to shape your organization in a different way.
Yeah,
I had this talk with somebody really high up in a semi-governmental organization, and I asked what their plans were. They had really big funding going on, and they had a big bunch of money, and they were about to change, or at least they wanted to change the end product. And I said, oh, wow, that probably means you have a lot of different thinking people, right? Different DNA in your organization. And the answer was no, because next to, let's say, the assignment of changing, she also had the other assignment of being the same.
Yeah.
And being the same is also keeping the people that are performing well at this moment, or let's say people that are, let's say if you remove those people, you might lose like fidelity or quality or whatever kind of things.
Yeah.
And I found it really interesting that or perhaps she didn't think about it, but that that the rest of the organization wasn't thinking about. So what's the delta? How can we go there? What is the better model for the future? Yeah. And I think that's something that's really lacking. And I think this particular book on enterprise design is really helping to wrap your brain around that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I mean, again, that it is an object of design, that it can be designed and can be redesigned and can be undesigned.
Yeah.
I mean, what you just described is the innovator's dilemma. Right? I mean, you have this organization that is optimized for a certain path, for a certain output, for a certain market.
Yeah.
And to come up with even with a delta of that course is in the end, it's maybe not a threat, but it's almost unseeable, because that's not what the machine is optimized for.
Yeah.
I mean, can you imagine being an innovator at Google, for instance?
At the moment, not anymore.
I mean, Google that makes like how many 100 million a day just by selling ads?
Yeah.
I mean,
Google isn't being invented anymore. I mean, they just make different expressions of the same thing.
But even if you came up with something new, right? You're competing with a machine that delivers $500 million a day.
Yeah.
Take Apple. I mean, the iPhone is still so massively profitable. I mean, the watch is doing great.
Yeah.
But it's literally just grains of sand in the desert compared to the iPhone. In itself it would be an amazing business, but it drops into insignificance compared to the iPhone. So it's iPhone Alpha and iPhone Omega.
Yeah, of course.
And of course we have the Vision Pro the Vision Pro. I said it.
Okay, let's dive into Vision Pro because we need to talk about it. It's too topical. So to the people at home, we rather stay away from the topical part, although Primer was also about the rabbit. Okay, but so we try to talk about the things underneath, like topics that pop up in the news or whatever.
Yeah,
and I think the Vision Pro, like the new product of Apple, is a little bit too fresh. I only seen the hype. You know, all the famous people, all the YouTubers have gotten or bought this really expensive screen that you can attach to your face. And I really don't see how we can, next to actually testing it myself, I don't really see how to judge it, right?
Well, I mean, but
on its merits.
Yeah, of course we can't. We should have the thing in our hands. But no, I mean, so but you say the hype. I think it's criti hype.
Yeah,
there's a lot of criticism.
Oh, really?
I think, well, maybe I have a very specific media diet.
Definitely, I
But I
guess.
see a lot of critical things on how this isn't working and how it's a disappointment, and this will never get anywhere.
But if you follow the path of iPhone a little, like let's say 10 years back, this was the case for the App Store and for all kinds of different products and side products.
And just for shits and giggles, I read an article recently from 1988 that says that laptops will never materialize.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well. So what I found.
I mean, looking at those people that are looking in the future with the materials of today, I think that's both not fair, but also a little bit limited thinking.
Yeah.
So what kind of content are they creating next to, let's say, outrage content or kind of thing?
Yeah, but what I also find telling is that the things that seem to be working, that people seem to be latching onto, is pure consumption. So watching movies, for instance.
Yeah.
That seems to be the universal feedback. That is really great.
With a new type of content, I've heard, like a very immersive.
Yeah, but also just watching a movie.
Yeah.
Just a movie. There was this great, I think it's it's almost a meme now. It's a guy on X, the platform formerly known as Twitter, where he was watching the latest Avatar movie with the Vision Pro on, with this little baby boy resting on his chest.
Right.
The boy was sleeping. Well, half of the people thought it was horrible. How can you actually have your child and wear a
Oh yeah, how can you connect with your child?
That's it. Exactly. Yeah. You and the other half said, "Oh, that's kind of cute, right? That you're still with your kid while watching the movie and being in a comfy position, so he could lie down and had this thing on his face. So it's
the child wouldn't know per se.
No, but that it is consumption. I think I couldn't help but feel disappointed. Right, so the first thing we do is consume things.
Yeah,
video, great.
You mean rather than interact or do something new? Being because I think what you're saying is, why isn't this product equipped with this unique application of this technology? Let's say the ultimate application, expression of this particular technology.
Yeah,
you're kind of disappointed in that.
Yeah, but I think that's also. I mean, I just bought a new iPad. The previous one was 6 years old, so I'm quite proud. I stuck with an iPad Pro for 6 years. But I got the Pro because it had the pencil, and I thought I'm gonna do a gazillion things.
You're
with
being
the pencil.
creative.
This is just a Substack reader and YouTube viewer.
Yeah,
it's the reason why I got a new one is because I can't watch YouTube videos long enough because the battery dies. So I'm really puzzled. Is consumption the rut we are in? That the devices we get is pure for consumption?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, mostly I see the artifacts of that being disconnection and perceiving society in a new way, I guess. So because we're very invested into those little shiny planks in front of our faces, and it seems to disconnect us from not per se other people. I mean, that's kind of like the given. You know, everybody's saying if you give like an iPad to your kid, then you're a horrible parent because that kid will probably easier create a relationship with that little plank rather than yourself. I'm not sure if that's really true. I'm not sure if that's even like something you should discover But I do know it's very attractive. And if I look in the streets, and this is probably my lens on the world, I see a lot of people being disconnected with their environment. So not of course, yes, they are not aware of being run in by other people, for example, and just walking in the street and being oblivious of other people. But specifically also their own environment, being divorced from the responsibility of their own environment. They act like an NPC, basically, like a non-playing character.
Yeah.
So these are robots, basically, and they're not actual part of the experience of other people. They're just obstacles that kind of like interact, right?
And how would that look like, being involved in other people's lives?
Well, I would say a sense of neighborliness, being neighborly. So rather than walking next to each other in opposite direction and saying nothing and being very invested into your little plank, you say, "Hey, how are you doing? This is great," or just nod, or I don't know, or curse them out if it's a really bad neighbor. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I see a lackluster of emotion between people, or if there is some collision. So it's like people expect their environment to act differently. There's outrage rather than like an appropriate reaction. Right. So if people bike on the footpath, and somebody says something about it, they're outraged because why is the environment talking to me? Why is it trying to influence me? You know, rather than, oh yeah, you're kind of like, yeah, those are the rules we agreed upon when I actually learned how to ride my bike. And I don't know. So this is kind of like the sense I've been getting from, not per se just this little screen in your hand, but perhaps also a artifact of us being very apart in the period of COVID, that might have like pushed us a little bit further than we already were. It's kind of depressing, right?
It is. It is. And we started with a expensive new Apple product. I mean, and we got into the depressing mode.
Right. So I think it might. So the thing that I really wondered of the and really wish upon the Vision Pro is that it would be like a social tool. So that it will be very easy to connect and easy to collaborate. Or
So this is a nice one, because I was actually hoping it would be an environmental tool to stake with your language, right? So I saw this really great demo, a cooking demo, right? Somebody wearing the Vision Pro to actually cook something.
Oh yeah.
And you can put a timer on your pot that's on the stove and cooking.
Yeah.
And you look away and the timer is still there, right? I mean, so the timer sticks to the pan or the pot or whatever, and you can have several timers.
Oh, that's nice.
So and what I was hoping for, and what I would want a Vision Pro for, it's the as a bit of a segue, I do a lot of Zettelkasten things. You know the Zettelkasten method?
No.
As you can see, I really take pride in my German.
Yeah.
By the way, his surname is Günther.
Günther.
Yeah.
Oh, just like the first name.
Yeah.
So it's two first names.
It's two first names. Okay. It's the so it's the it's an old system where you have little index cards and you write things on a card and you link them to other cards. So gradually you build up this whole library. Basically, it's hyperlink before the World Wide Web.
Right.
It's hyperlink on paper. And of course now I have a Zettelkasten system in Obsidian. So I have all these little small markdown files with little references and hashtags, and it builds this whole forest of knowledge.
That's lovely.
In theory. Well, I mean, so what I was hoping for.
But you need a librarian to actually maintain it and make the connections.
And what I was hoping for with a Vision Pro, right? So here is my main area of thought, and here are these things. I look left, I look right, and here are all the other things that are somewhat related but are not. I'm actually walking through the forest of my little index cards.
Right.
And I pick
your mind castle. You really want to see your mind castle.
And I was really wondering, how would I redecorate or reorganize my little home office to better fit with that thing? So what would I put in my actual office to be a good, I'm almost inclined to say, stage for this kind of activity? And I was already dreaming what I would do to my office. And I mean, just like the example of the cooking example with the little, what would I have in my room to make easier the navigation of those virtual notes? And that would be, that one I was really looking forward to. But it turns out that the Vision Pro has a very small field of view.
Right.
So you can apparently just pretty much look on straight on, but you don't see anything in your peripheral view. And of course, that's exactly what I would need, right? Because here is this thing and it's begging for my attention. Oh, of course.
Yeah.
And maybe version 2.
So it would be, right. I heard a lot of people talking about versions.
Yeah.
Of the, they wish upon all kinds of scenarios. But I also would have guessed like those scenarios should be like in the mind's eye of the creators of the Vision Pro. And I guess Apple never did that. I think they mostly created, just like you just described, like the stage for the wonderful things to happen, and they really didn't seem to be invested in what actually happened on that stage.
In the end, it's still a hardware company.
It is, yeah.
I mean, that's the hit. I mean, talking about the history and the trajectory it projects forward.
Yeah,
I think this is still the same thing. I mean, they're still horrible at software. Okay, I'm sorry. I love Keynote. My professional life would end without Keynote.
Yeah. I think Keynote is definitely way better than PowerPoint, just because it's more focused, and it does a lot of things you expect it to do. Yeah. Rather than PowerPoint. PowerPoint does exactly the opposite, it seems.
And the joy of Magic Move.
What's the Magic Move?
So Magic Move is an animation in Keynote, and it tries to bridge if you have 2 subsequent slides, it tries to move the objects on slide A when you move to slide B, and sometimes you get the most hilariously unexpected magical effects.
It's like a morph or something.
It's a morph thing, and sometimes it does just things, and you think, "Oh, that's kind of awesome. Never thought it would do that."
Yeah.
So I always throw in a Magic Move.
I think so. So that's something unexpected, right? So you discovered probably it's not the intention for that horrible transition, but it happens, and you're kind of happy about it, or you're really happy about it.
And then I actually shape the 2 slides, the 2 subsequent slide A and slide B, in such a way it even amplifies the move I unexpectedly got.
Yeah, I saw this with a TikToker. So on TikTok, he's a producer and he makes videos. And he makes videos for music artists. And his setup is, if you look at the videos, link in the show notes, it's really, really nice. If you look at his videos, it's like the artist is central. But what happens when the artist starts singing and moving about, there's all kinds of magical filters and really weird perspectives and focus on the artist, and it looks like he's using red cameras, really expensive cameras, and like unlimited resolution and all kinds of things. And so there was one video, and there was a behind the scenes of what he actually did. And he used like a gimbal, like this stabilizer for a camera, and a really cheap camera with really cheap lens, wide angle lens. And at home he would filter like the most blatant, badly working filters on top of each other. So one would mask the shortcomings of the other. Yeah. And the final result was that wonderful experience of a very distorted view of the artist, but very engaging in the music, right? It was really edited on the music of the artist itself.
Yeah.
So within that limit, I like the saying of that real art exists only because of within the limits of where it's created, right? Yeah. An artist is way better, can act way better when you're limited in means rather than if you had unlimited means. Yeah. And I think similarly, these objects of Apple also are kind of created. They are created as a limited canvas for the creative person or the artist to actually discover the things they would like to do with those canvases.
Yeah.
And if you look at the other side of the how do you call it, of the world, let's say Android has actually unlimited possibilities. You could almost program the hardware, right? You can almost read out the pixels if you really do your best, if you hack the firmware or whatever.
Yeah, that's true.
But nobody does.
No.
Because they still do like the silly stuff, so the freedom or the perceived freedom and openness of those platforms are perhaps, I don't know, limiting.
Yeah, and this is interesting. I actually still have an Android phone and use that as a Wi-Fi scanner, because you can get much more Wi-Fi data than you get on an iPhone still.
Yeah,
even to this day. It's that's actually a really nice one. Never thought about it like that.
Yeah, and perhaps also this Vision Pro is limited on purpose. I don't know. But if you look, for example, at a different kind of company, let's say Disney. So there's this book. It's a wonderful book, by the way. It's a book, What If Disney Ran My Hospital? So there's a different perception, right? Disney is driven, or at least from the outside and how it perceives itself, is driven by experience. So everything you do within a park, or really from the point you start thinking to going to a park, or if you start going to a movie of Disney, it's all about the experience around it, and to emphasize the products. Right, and in this case, it's the characters and the people over there, or being together with your family. So they design the experience. No matter where you go in that park, the same experience will happen. Being wondrous, or enjoying, or whatever kind of thing. And if you compare that to Apple, it's kind of like the opposite. It's giving you like the plain platform. And you are responsible to create the experience and to maintain the experience. So the goal is just being really reliable and consistent, and that's it. Just like you would say it, like indeed a hardware company.
Yeah.
And I really like, so to finish the story about what if Disney would be the boss of my hospital, that would be focused on the experience, being very welcoming. And what's the task of this institute? Is becoming better. So how can you do that? Being a great conduit for people to feel at ease, happy colors perhaps, or being open for the family, and all kinds of principles that are really guiding for people to heal rather than to repair. And that's kind of like what most hospitals are at the moment. Mm-hmm. It's a repair shop. I mean, of course, it's inhabited by loving and very nice people. But in the end, you're there to be repaired.
Yeah,
and I really like that sentiment of the focus of experience. I'm pretty sure they fail and at several levels, and you can really kick out all the foundation beneath that. But that sentiment of what's the end goal of this company is very interesting to me.
Yeah, it sounds like a nice meme. What if Disney XXX?
Or a different company.
Yeah, sure. I was thinking about that one. Yeah.
Yeah. What if a bakery would do something with your hospital, with your hotel, for example? I don't know. I really. So in those things, so different perspectives are kind of like also coming from this little book, because this book says you can divide like your company in like 3 parts, like who you are, basically the why of Simon Sinek, how you do things, or how you make things, or how you maintain yourself, and it's organization, architecture, all kinds of technology stuff, and basically everything that's that's sticking things together. And finally, but surely not last, is the experience, is the part that is given towards your customers, so they are prone to actually give you value.
Yeah.
And I really like, so if you get that experience part, you can say there are really a lot of things you can do to heighten the experience of people. Right, you can say, let's make a very complete experience, which is very expensive to make. But you can also say, okay, let's focus on one thing, so that gets all the attention and all the money, etc. And let's make sure people get the means to cope with the lack of the other things.
Yeah.
Right, and it takes a different company and a different organization.
Yeah.
Perhaps a little bit more creative. And I really like that malleability, right? If you change something here, you should also change something here. And that's not, so if you talk, for example, in innovation, most people just want a gadget and expect the gadget to dictate all the other things. And it's called digital transformation also, right? If you digitize things, you expect the rest of the organization to fall in line and like do new things. All of a sudden use PCs or computers to, I don't know, do your task.
Yeah.
But this is not natural, right? It's something you really should say. So we're doing things faster, or we want to do things faster, so we use computers, and that means we need computer happy people. I don't know.
Computer happy people.
Yeah, I specifically say happy rather than savvy, because savvy is not per se. You really want people to still enjoy their job, because if they don't, you just have people that are holding computers with a grudge.
Yeah,
begrudgingly. It's nice word.
Which of course is how computers are positioned more often than not. Computer says no.
Yeah, indeed, and also how they are designed. Right, it's. Beyond the limits of what they need to do according to the producers of the software or hardware, it just says nothing. And it's really oblivious of what people want and envision of doing with it. It's kind of like on the contrary of what I just said, but yeah. Anyway, wow. Such a discussion that it is. Just this little book tries to...
And I think we proved that this is unscripted.
This is definitely unscripted. But I'm kind of like waiting on the epiphany. I'm just.
Well, I mean, so this is my OG epiphany.
Yeah.
That enterprises can be designed.
It is, yeah.
That design can have as a subject the enterprise.
Yeah.
Or your team. Or the way you communicate with your stakeholders. So
do you talk to your colleagues or your superiors about such things?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's so one of the things I did back in the day was designing APIs.
Right.
But designing APIs not for programmers, but for
people.
People.
Right.
And the reason why I massively latched onto Hypermedia APIs is because they actually tell a story. A bit like a website tells a story.
Right.
And in the end, an Hypermedia API is just an ugly website, right? If you have a website, you take away the colors and the font information and the CSS magic. It's an API.
Yeah.
It
has a function, right? It needs to say something, or it needs to do something with the people looking at the information.
Yeah, and I mean, it gives you information, right? I mean, it's you can go here. I mean, what does a website do? You can go here for the latest weather. You can go there for the latest sport news.
Yeah.
And that's how you navigate a website you never been to, right? You didn't really read the official specification. You didn't do any certification on using a website. You navigate the things.
There's no course to use the website.
Yeah, and a properly designed API does exactly the same thing, right? To actually add an account, go here with this content type, for instance. So it actually tells a story, and every time you do something, it's almost like a bit like a text adventure of the 1980s.
Yeah.
Right? Every time you do something, look around. There's a bear lurking behind the tree.
Yeah.
And every time you do something, the environment of the game responds, and it opens up a whole new avenue of possibilities.
Right. So, but similarly, if you have something like you're also through the content, you also dictate the expectations of people, right? So if you say there's a bear, then people start looking for a gun or a means to protect them, or a means to run away, or something like that.
Yeah.
So these are the things you can offer.
Yeah.
So if you offer something that's not in line with the narrative, if you will, then you would probably. So if somebody says, "Look for pickaxe," they probably won't find it unless they're in a mine or or in a quarry or something.
And of course, in the original Zork adventure, there was a pickaxe.
There was a pickaxe. Yeah, I know. Yeah, but I really I like the sentiment of APIs being the conduits of the narrative or telling the story.
Yeah, I think it's a medium for storytelling, and I know it sounds somewhat silly that an API would be a medium for storytelling, but that is what it does. And
and that also implies that it's interactive.
Yes,
right? It's because somebody says something, you need to react.
Yeah,
and you're basically kind of like scripting what kind of
it is
probability or what story you want people to experience.
Yeah, I mean, so what paths exist?
Yeah, exactly.
And what the way how people travel that path and in what order?
Yeah.
I mean, it's less defined. So you give a whole bunch of agency to the person actually using the API, just like there is agency in how I use a website.
But is it though? I mean, you're kind of like programming the agents, right? You're giving them limited.
Yeah, you're giving them absolutely limited options,
right?
Just like on a website, you have limited links you can follow on the page that is being presented.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe you can have some hidden links. Okay, it's the.
So you made those APIs. Did you also find that, for example, implementing, let's say, voice interfaces or atypical interfaces like voice interfaces was more easy?
Yeah, it's the we did something with a voice interface, but I can't really recall. It was still an API. It was still an API to actually program a voice interface. So it's still now. But you said limitations and I said options, but actually it's affordances. Right. I mean, devices have affordances. Things have affordances. This mic has an affordance. This table gives me affordance to do certain things like this.
Yes.
This annoying. Yes. It's the and I think in a sense I always looked at what an API provides you is an affordance that you can respond to in a certain way.
But an API being digital can't communicate how you might use it either appropriately or inappropriately. So, for example, you just did this with a table, and I think. Yeah, that's a totally fair way to do things with a table. I mean, and also we're leaning on it, which is also a nice property of table.
Yeah.
But but it doesn't happen with an API per se.
No, not per se. So the metaphor breaks down a bit, but you can still, for instance, embed your API in another system, another automated system that uses that API and feed it with data that you get from another source. I mean, unbeknownst to the API you were using. So there is a bit. It's not that it is constrained, right?
Yeah.
I mean. Inherently, but it's also there is a bit of agency involved. It's the it allows you to come up with options for its use.
Yeah, and it's also a means of discovery. I mean, to me,
discovery, absolutely, yeah,
and not only from the perspective of people, but also of the, let's say, the proprietor of the business, because you can listen to what kind of questions you get to the API. Right?
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, if everybody is looking for the pickaxe, you're bound to write like a new part of your API where pickaxe is an option.
Oh yeah, I mean, as you can see from my response, I mean, the big fascination with APIs and actually putting them out there, right? Just publicly for anyone to use them, was actually to have a radar of what would people do.
Right.
What would people do? What questions would they ask? What input? What data would they input in order to get a certain output? In what other agents are they running the API? So you get a lot of information for where your functionality exposed via the API is used and by whom and in what context.
Sounds a little bit like speculative design. Right?
It is.
You make something to create a discussion.
It is. Totally is.
So getting back to the Apple Vision Pro, might that be like a really, really expensive speculative design? Like, okay, guys, we're thinking in this direction. Start hating on us so we know what to make next?
I hope so, in a sense.
Yeah.
I mean, that is the typical arc, right? I mean, the original iPhone was intended to be HTML5 only, right?
Yeah,
so instead of apps, you would actually use HTML5 apps.
Yeah.
Well, that didn't pan out. And
it still works, by the way.
It still works, but the engagement for people making those HTML5 apps was rather low.
Yeah.
And we knew already back then that there was a really nice structured SDK lurking in your iPhone, right? I mean, you had to jailbreak your iPhone to actually start using those internal APIs and get a hello world little message box on your iPhone. And of course, we were all afraid that we would brick our expensive.
All of a sudden, you would.
It's
like 600 or how many euros was it in those days? 800 euros.
Yeah, I think it
max.
I got the 3 as the first one. I think it was 6 or 7.
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
It was really, really, really expensive compared
to all the other stuff.
Others.
Yeah. And of course, now 600 would be very cheap for an iPhone.
Yeah, indeed. I think they still exist, but it would be like a really old model.
Yeah, the old model.
Yeah.
So that seems to be the arc of where things are going.
So there's something perhaps we also should wish upon, like companies at the moment. So to make limited little, I wouldn't say experiences, but let's say changes in your three parts of your company, in your identity, in your architecture and organization, and perhaps also how you express it to other people, and start wondering, okay, we're going to change it not because we think it's a great idea, but because we want to hear what people think or how they or see what kind of behavior they show.
Yeah.
Are they working around it or are they embracing it? And if so, why? In both cases.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that might be a great way to get out of the rut of being this very classically structured company.
Yeah, and it feels like a rot, to be honest.
I think so too. Yeah, and it's also self-inflicted. So, and I started out, I think one of my first questions was, did people ask you or say to you that you were really creative? And I get this a lot. And people are both surprised that I'm really creative, but also they say it as something untangible. No, not untangible, unobtainable. Something they could never do. And I'm not saying everybody should do, like, for example, design thinking. But I would say, similar to using a computer, it would be a skill set that's very handy, not only to, I don't know, find out better ways to do your work, but also just to better collaborate with each other and discover not only your happiness, but in particular the connected happiness of the organization or with your customers. Yeah. So I would. So I'm always surprised if people say you're so creative, because I think what this means you are not. And if people say no, I'm not creative at all, I find it kind of like objectionable. So so why aren't you doing your homework kind of thing? You know, it's like, why are you biking on the footpath kind of thing? And I'd rather for them to try it out than to never have tried it.
Apparently, there is a barrier to actually try things out, do silly things, do stupid things.
Yeah.
Right, or things that look stupid or actually are stupid after the fact. Because I mean, if you are creative, you also do things that you say afterwards. That was a bit silly. That was a bit nonsensical.
Yeah.
That turned out totally different than I expected.
Yeah, specifically that.
Yes.
I love that.
But that's it, right? But
because that means you're learning new things, and that's so important.
Yeah. And of course, you also learn that there is a lot of freedom to actually do things. I mean, I think we ask permission way too often and way too much.
Yeah.
Can I do this? I mean, you asked me when I get this creativity question. Sadly, no.
Aw.
But I get a lot of.
So, dear colleagues of Ron.
Can you please? No, but I mean, it's the. I do get, certainly in the past, got the question: did you ask permission?
Oh.
Oh, the fact that you just do it.
Yeah.
I envy you. And sometimes that you just do it. It's the you're braver than I. Which is not the case.
Weird.
No, it's the I'm not a brave person.
No,
Apparently, I'm not creative as well, but I'm not brave.
Yeah, and it's also the asking of permission in most cases is, I guess, is part of that same blueprint we all know. Right?
Yeah,
this
I think
is
so.
not my field, for example.
Yeah, indeed.
Or this is not, or I'm not sure, I don't have a budget.
Yeah.
You know, so it's really weird if you really think about it.
Yeah. So for instance, I was once invited for the service design conference.
Oh, nice.
In Barcelona or Madrid. It was in Spain. So there I was as a programmer, right, telling service designers about service design.
Yeah.
But then I thought,
because
well,
you had a unique perspective, I would say.
I was actually, so first I thought, well, aren't you a bit of a fraud? No, but they invited me.
Yeah.
Well, and I can talk about the topic for 25 minutes because that was the slot. Well, for sure, gonna do that then.
Yeah.
And
service design is really great. It's very vague also. To me.
It's bloody obvious. Why shouldn't you design services to be useful and usable and desirable?
Yeah.
Why shouldn't you design services at the same time to be effective and efficient? So thinking about, it's the same thing, right? That a service is the subject of design.
Yeah.
That you can design, redesign, and on-design services. Of course.
Same as you would do for products. Only
ditto. Yeah, I mean
you would say, for example, I think service would be like the vaguest part of that you can design. It's very ethereal, right? If you can just act as a human, act differently, and the service has changed.
Yeah.
And then you have like software, and it takes a little bit more, but still very malleable and very flexible. You can make it faster just by putting more hardware in there. But you also have like the interstitial between software and physical objects in the world, right? Both the object that you would make, so for example a microphone, but also the objects you should take into account, like the microphone stand, right? They should fit together, so you think about that. And you might even think about, well, we're just making things for a new kind of microphone stand. So you're also designing your environment.
Yeah.
So that path from service design to software design, or let's say digital service design, hardware design, and system design, like the back end or the to me that's really logical and really appealing to think about.
Yeah.
And I think so sometimes you have companies that just do like the first little bit and seem to limit themselves. Okay, if we're going, for example, if we're doing innovation, we're just going to innovate in the experience part or in the engagement part, rather than, no, probably we also can innovate in what kind of person we want to be, or what kind of artifacts we need to create to fulfill like an entire, or narratives even. Because those are also kind of like skipped.
Right? Yeah. So pretty much everything is the subject of design. I mean, and what is design thinking other than applying design mindset to non-typical design context?
Yeah. I mean, it's just steps that tease out the mindset of being thinking of new things, thinking of possibilities,
or that surface, or that give a context to that mindset. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
I think it's conductive. It's so if I do the steps with people, I train people in design thinking and also human-centered design, and it's the training that I design, because I also design the training.
Of course, design
is aimed to tease out that specific mindset, to tease out, so to have people feel like what it feels like to make a thing, to think up a new thing, even if it's really silly or not obtainable in the short term.
Yeah.
But specifically thinking out like, so if there's no limits and you would make like something that fits really, really with this one person, and they design, they kind of like have weird wishes, but we have something that fits those wishes perfectly. I said, yeah, that's exactly that. That mindset that you just had there is the creative mindset, and that makes you think of like not per se new things, but more precise things for customers.
Lovely.
Yeah, and so I'd like to, and this also with human-centered design, it's the same thing. It's about empathizing.
Yeah.
So act out how a person would act, right?
Yeah.
Be that person.
Be that person.
And envelop yourself with the parameters or limitations or possibilities, so you can experience what would be like a better answer.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of like, well, we really went into the
into design.
the weeds of
yes.
things. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
See, that's what a single book on a table does.
Yeah, exactly. So what's the next book, Ron?
Oh, let me think about that one.
Is it a teaser?
It's a teaser.
Okay.
Yeah. We're gonna do it shouldn't become a book club, right? We have
No.
But it's
The books are really they are nice artifacts that you can point to, right? So if you find this interesting, read the book. You probably end up in being very frustrated because it's badly written, at least from my point of view. But it is very clear, and that's really nice. It's a unique book. I haven't seen different books that describe the same matter in the same clarity, because it seems to go against the grain, I guess.
So you can still have profound and impactful books that are badly written. I think that's a message in itself. And on that note,
okay, so this is just a model. The second episode. If you like more information about this wonderful podcast, just go to itsjustamodel.com. And if you think this is really nice, I really want Ron and Peet to continue this wonderful adventure, look on the website, because there's a link and it says something value for value, and this is a way for you to contribute or to interact or whatever kind of thing you like to do with us. And we're really open for anything. So this is a start of a conversation and the start of discovery, rather than us dictating what you should do with us. So having said that, that's it. And see you next time.
See you next time. Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.